I guess we can call this meeting to order. First order of business is approval of the minutes from the September 24th meeting. Can I have a motion?
Motion to approve the minutes.
Second?
Everyone stares at you.
Charlie's.
I know he needs to say
Second.
All right, all in favor? Excellent. Okay, policy review. Policy 203, board director's conflict of interest. Chase, do you want to take that?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. Good evening, everybody. At our meeting last month, we talked about considering some sort of language related to board members resigning from the board prior to obtaining employment with the school district. We looked and found a policy from Des Moines that seemed to capture what we might be looking at, and Director Finch sent that to us, and so we incorporated this policy. Then we got some feedback after we had posted the policies, because we just said employment, and technically earlier in the policy it says that board members can work for less than $6,000 a year. So we're happy with how it reads now, because we just said that last sentence in green: should a board member want to apply for full-time staff employment, he or she must first resign from the board. One of the pieces we talked about also was whether or not we put in a time frame for how long someone has to be off the board before they could accept employment. The way that the Des Moines policy was written and that we went with is it actually says they must first resign, or they want to apply for full-time employment. What we had talked about was a gap of time between when they left the board and when they took employment. This policy would suggest that even before a board member would be offered a job, they would actually have to resign. So they'd have to resign at the front end of the process, not after they'd gone through the employment application process and been offered a job. So we didn't feel like a time period was necessary. I hope that still captures kind of what we were talking about, but this was one that we know another district was using, so we added that language.
Yeah, I mean, if it's good enough for Des Moines, it's good enough for me.
I
That's how I feel about it, so,
Agreed.
yeah.
I pretty much agree with the way this is written, except that this last sentence applies to board members applying for full-time staff employment. Does that mean a board member could apply for 3/4, half-time?
Well, and we debated that, Charlie, and that's, so the short answer is yes, but they're limited to making $6,000 a year. And that's what that's what the earlier part of the policy says. And so one of the suggestions was, well, we put if they just want to apply for more than $6,000 a year. That's not only how we post our positions, and so we thought the cleanest was just to say full-time employment, and it still captured what we were trying to convey. But technically, yeah, board members can work for the district as long as they're not compensated more than $6,000 during a calendar year.
And our other policies cover that, so.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Does anyone have any other thoughts or concerns about
It
that?
looks good to me.
Yeah, looks good to me too.
It's pretty simple and straightforward.
I think so.
Okay, moving on to the 300 series. Not a lot of changes there either.
No, this is becoming pretty common. I mean, which is why we do this, right? Why we start taking them a series at a time on an annual basis, once a month. We don't have a lot of changes. Every once in a while we read and we find something here or there that isn't exactly how we do it. So there's no real substantive changes to any of these policies, just more word changes or things that are more reflective of our current practices than maybe in other places. For example, I think that down in the evaluation section, we insert on 303.6, we insert that the Chief Human Resource Officer will be responsible for implementing an evaluation process. For a district our size, that's not something the superintendent would do. And so we want to make sure that we're accurate, because the last thing we want is for an employee to be evaluated and then try to make a stink that it's Nick doing it, not Matt. So just small things like that in the 300s, but overall, nothing substantive from our end, but happy to answer questions that board members might have.
Doesn't appear anybody has any
Okay.
questions.
I like that.
Okay. Item 3, policy 216.2, Board of Directors Member Development Training, and 216.3, Board of Directors Member Compensation and Expenses.
Yeah, so we brought this one to you guys just from, we ran across an issue where one of you, by no fault of your own, I think just exposed a hole in our process that if you were to sign up for a continuing ed class and sign up for that and ask the district to pay for that, of course we want to support your training and development, but we really don't have any boundaries around that to know, okay, well, how many is appropriate, how much reimbursement would we do for continual learning? And so we really kind of wanted to bring that to you tonight for, board member ongoing development and training, and then what that would look like if we want to put some kind of a threshold around there. So again, nobody's abused it or done anything inappropriate. It's kind of open-ended, and it might make sense that we try to create some type of a threshold in there about, okay, is there a certain dollar amount or number of continuing ed courses that we'd want to look at? And apologies that I don't have a great suggestion ready to offer you tonight for that, but just thought it was a good timely one to go ahead and put on there.
So this would be above and beyond the annual convention?
Right.
Would you take that into consideration if that board member didn't go to the annual convention and they didn't incur that expense?
Yeah, potentially. I mean, I do think that'd probably be something to look at, right? Like if we were trying to, in some way, equalize spending amongst board members. If you're going to the convention, then that's a dollar expense. If you're not, then maybe that lead, you want to do your continuing ed in a different way. So I think those are the type of things we're looking for, Director Finch. Like before we suggest maybe a way to frame this out, then what are the things we want to think about? So that's a good one for us to consider.
I don't have any idea about any parameter on it.
I mean, are you looking like a dollar amount?
Well, that's the thing. I don't really expect you guys to have a handle on a dollar amount. I mean, I guess as I'm sitting here, thought about the last few days, I think about, we could say something as to not to exceed the board item for professional development, and just like write in something about board members should check with board secretary about capacity in the budget to support that ongoing development before signing up for a course. So it's not just after the fact that you sign up and then you send a bill, that instead is there enough room in there to continue to do that? It can be evaluated by the board president, vice president to monitor, that account to make sure we can still pay for people that want to go to the convention and sign up for those continuing ed courses. So we could work some generalized language around that and just look at what that line item is, and again, not an exorbitant amount or anything, but
Right.
That sounds good.
if one of you all of a sudden wanted to sign up for 30 ISB courses, then we might have a problem, but
Right.
yeah.
And for comparisons, when we've even looked at the administrators, we've done it a variety of different ways. There was at one point where we did a dollar figure, and so every administrator was just given, not given that money,
Yeah.
but could spend up to a certain amount,
Right.
kind of based on what we saw.
I think when we did that, they did either dues or conferences, right? They could
Right.
do professional
Yeah.
memberships or
professional memberships or that. And then we've changed it and also looked at basically we'll pay for you to go to one, like a regional one, but then also to do one locally or virtually. So I think there's a number of different paths that we could kind of set up. And then for teachers, we do it even differently. They have to fill out a form and then apply. And then, like Matt talked about, the president and vice president, Eliza is our TQ guru, and so then she evaluates those requests. So I think there's a number of different ways that we do it inside the organization or have done inside the organization that we could set up to mirror or use as a benchmark.
And would these trainings be limited to the IASB trainings, or are you opening it up to other trainings, or are you including books, or?
It's a good question. I think that's
right now, that
good.
situation hasn't really presented. I think, in our mind, we kind of thought through ISB, but maybe if there is another request, then we want to look at that. Or have
Oddly
at
enough,
least some
there's-
language to speak
yeah,
to it.
I mean, there's two national school board associations right now
Yeah.
because it's split a few years ago.
Oh, I see.
And so there's probably trainings offered by both of those that would also provide pathways for continuing it.
So
It's kind
we
of-
don't have a budget for the board in terms of its expenses, right? Is there a budget item for teachers that are going to trainings?
Yeah. And we do have a
We
budget,
do
right?
have a
We have a
budget.
budget line item, but
Yeah.
that's the thing. I don't think there's any great awareness from you guys about what that is. We just usually charge back your convention expenses, and then if somebody does sign up for a course.
I'm
And
thinking
so-
more in terms of a member of the public looking at the board's expenses and saying what the budget
Mhm.
amount actually is, how close to spending it are we?
And that is something that exists within our system and can be reported on at any time.
Okay.
So, I mean, I think with those things you guys are sharing, I mean, we can probably come back with some language about that and even the considerations you were talking about there, Director Finch, about whether it's ISB or others, and then what's the process for some, I mean, we already speak to reimbursement process here, but maybe also the process about signing up for and being approved to attend or expend those
And
dollars.
books that you mentioned,
Yeah,
too.
resources, books, yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
Professional leave language in the teacher's contract. We have some of that fleshed out in terms of prior approval and some parameters for what is an acceptable use without it being too restrictive.
That we could work from that,
Could
yeah.
potentially, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll bring something back next
All
time.
right, great, thank you. All right, so our next policy and governance meeting, I believe, is November 26th.
We don't have a meeting the
We don't have a meeting?
26th, so you're in a little bit of a spot here.
Oh.
I think we're in a little bit of a spot with policy review because we won't have P&G the next 2 months unless we schedule something different. So you would have some options potentially about, like we have a date for Ed Committee in November, the 19th, that if we wanted to keep on going or if we wanted to look for a date in December. So you could either choose one of those tonight or you and I could collaborate on that, Director Finch, to see when we want to try to pull another meeting together, but it wouldn't be on the regular series
Okay.
of the second meetings because we don't have either of those second meetings in November or December.
Well, if we keep limiting them to 15 minutes, we just tack it
We
on.
might be okay, huh?
It's 200.
Man, I figured that
I
if
mean,
we do the 400s
Really shake
in
this
January,
up.
we would have to do 800 and 900 in May. Those
And we'd
two
be
series
okay.
aren't very big. Yeah, it would still be okay, so.
So Kim was talking about if we took 400s, if we didn't come back to the 400s till January, as long as we paired up the 8 and 900s in May, then we'll be on schedule, so.
Sounds good to me.
No, already been here.
Okay,
All right, we have a while to work on this policy then, so
Excellent.
that's great. Okay.
all right, good,
Motion
motion
to
adjourned.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Aye.
Aye.
All right, all in favor? Aye, thank you.
There you go.